prior to COVID, I was an ICU trauma flight nurse. And at the time of COVID, and May 2020, I was actually 4 months postpartum. My daughter was 4 months old. I was still breastfeeding. And I went to New York because on the news, they needed nurses and needed people who knew how to manage ventilators. And I told my husband, I'm like, we're all sheltering in place at that time, at the beginning of the pandemic. And I said, I should really go to New York, because how often do you get to help serve your country in a time of need and not be military? So that's what I did. I went with a travel agency that provided room and transport and things like that. And I went there, and mind you, this wasn't my first like mass casualty type emergency situation. I had worked in refugee camps before, prior to being pregnant. I worked the Ebola outbreak. I've been to Syria, things like that. And it was just absolute chaos when I got there.
I know that there was a video that went viral of you really getting to a point where you were seriously breaking down emotionally. We're going to roll to that clip quickly.
When I try and talk with some of the other nurses here, and they're like, well, you can't save everybody. And they all know what's happening. They all agree with me, and they all just shake their heads. And I'm like, am I the only one who is not a sociopath? To think that this is okay?
So, I was upset because at this point, when I did that video, they had actually moved me units. They had moved me off the ICU, and they were moving me up to a unit that was non-COVID, that was post-surgical. And it was because I was trying to get my Black patient off the ventilator. I'm like, look, he's completely COVID negative ×3. You guys are trying to make me hang remdesivir, and I'm noticing that everyone that gets remdesivir is dying. His white blood cell count is good. It's starting to climb a little bit because you guys won't give me antibiotics. All of these lines in him are now the risk for killing him, not COVID. I mean, once again, our ventilator settings are beautiful. We can start doing, sedation vacations. I'm not hanging remdesivir. He doesn't need it. Who consented to this? Because he has no family. And that's when they moved me up units. And that's when I realized that this was just a rigged game. They did not want these people off these ventilators. They did not want them discharged home. They, why would you not want someone off the ventilator? Because here's the thing. If you can get them off the ventilator, you can send them to a rehab or an LTAC, and free that bed up and get the next sick person in there. That's how it should be. You shouldn't just be sitting on these beds when someone qualifies to be out of that bed. And so it was like, I'm like, they don't want these people off these vents. They just want them to die. Like, why? Like, I've seen all of this like death and negligence and malfeasance go on. I stopped helping other people because they didn't want my opinion on like vent settings or anything like that. I'm like, I'm just going to focus on my patients. I'm going to make sure that they live. And they did not, like, if you caused any type of a commotion, if you even challenged what they were saying, you were gone. When they sent me back to the hotel that night after that viral video, I told my lead, I'm like, she's like, are you okay psychologically? And I'm like, I'm psychologically stable. I want to throw a chair across this room because nobody's listening to me and they're killing these patients. And my lead said to me, oh, well, you must have never worked in a teaching hospital before. And I'm like, yeah, I've worked in a teaching hospital before, and we don't murder our patients. And then I got back to the hotel, and it was required for me to go to occupational health and talk with the trauma counselor there and get checked out. And then they had to go to my room to make sure I wasn't going to like kill myself. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, and I told the trauma counselor that was there stationed in the hotel, they had called ahead to make sure that she would meet me at the door of the hotel. And she's like, and I'm like, no, I'm pissed about what's going on. They're killing these patients. They don't care because, they're just these disposable minorities in inner city hospital. Nobody cares. And she's like, I hear that a lot from the nurses. And I'm like, everybody knows, nobody will listen. And I'm just like, so then she had to escort me back to my hotel, kind of make sure I didn't have anything in there that I would hurt myself with. And her solution was for me to take a bath. Here's a bath bomb and get some sleep. You'll be better in the morning. I'm surprised she didn't give me a cookie.